Welcome to the Pat White Show. Well, here in the United States, we're about ready to go into week number 2 of the government shutdown. Now, since, back about 20 years ago, we have had a number of shutdowns. Government shutdown has happened through more than one administration. Probably the most recent one was back around 2013 when we had the Obamacare shutdown. And that required America to live through about, I think it was around 17 days of the government being closed down because the Democrats wanted Obamacare to be put into law. I remember Nancy Pelosi going on TV saying, well, we don't know what's in the Obamacare bill until we pass it. Well, once they found out when they passed it, everybody, you, me, and everybody in America was legally required to have health insurance. You had to fill it out on your tax form that you had the health insurance. So people went in and bought the Obamacare. Because remember, the president went on TV and said, oh, if you like your doctor, you're going to keep your doctor. You like your health plan, you're going to keep your health plan. Well, did that happen for everybody on Obamacare? I beg to say no. But turns out the rates for Obamacare have been going up and up and up. So what the Congress did a number of years ago was to subsidize, put in taxpayer money into the insurance companies to subsidize the Obamacare. So they can say to people, well, your care is not that much, your health care doesn't cost that much because it was being subsidized by the government, by your taxpayer dollars. Well, ultimately, in the big, beautiful bill passed by Congress, there was a sunset legislation on that subsidizing, a sunset legislation. And that legislation, frankly, is going to happen at the end of this year when the subsidies go away. Now, what happens? Well, the Democrats are yelling and screaming, saying, wait, we got to do something about this, or millions of people on Obamacare will find out they can't afford it, because it was made so costly in the beginning. And we have to keep subsidizing it and keep adding to the national debt because we don't want people to realize we sold them a bill of goods, which they did. Sorry. So there's a situation involving the subsidization of Obamacare so your rates won't go up. Oh, they're going to go up, all right, but not as much when the subsidies go off, because then they will go up big time. All right, secondary thing they're concerned about, the Democrats. They want to reinstitute, if you will, PBS and NPR. They want to bring it back. They're saying, hey, we realize that not many people see it, watch it, or what have you, but we want to bring it back because we owe our constituents that. So that's what they're arguing about. That's one thing. And then the other thing, this is a big one. This has to do with illegals and Medicaid. Now, there's a difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is federal government stuff. I mean, if you're on retirement, you got Medicare rather, you pay for that, comes out of your retirement, your Social Security check. But Medicaid is handled by the states. Each state has their own Medicaid program. Now, much of what happens in that Medicaid program is in fact paid for by the federal government. But the states themselves have to pony up a whole bunch of money themselves because they take care of low-income people in their particular state. Well, here's the problem that happens. Let's say that some person or persons, a family of illegals, somebody gets sick. Somebody gets the strep throat. All right, let's use that. And where do they go? They go to the hospital. They go to the emergency ward because more often than not, those families do not have a regular doctor, a family doctor like most of us have. Their medical care comes through the hospitals. And why? Because they know that the hospitals want to get their money. So they're going to turn that particular person who is illegal, doesn't matter to the hospitals, they don't care. They're not going to ask. They're going to turn them into what is called emergency Medicaid. They are put on the rolls of Medicaid, so the hospital gets paid. They want their money. So as a result, hospitals are going to get their money, and the Medicaid, the federal government portion of it, pays for the illegals to get their insurance. and they be served by the hospitals because that's where they go. If you've ever been to an emergency room of a hospital, you know how long it takes to get yourself served or taken care of because so many people are in there who don't have insurance. That's their form of medical care, emergency room. Well, the government put new laws in the big, beautiful bill that says, hey, if you want to get onto Medicaid, you're going to have to do community service or find a job. I think it's about as 80 hours a month you have to put in time. It doesn't mean getting a job, but you have to have public service. Go work for a PSA, a food bank, whatever. So, and of course, there's many people on Medicaid and on food stamps, because that's another place this is coming into. You want to get your food stamps if you're not part of the working society. You know, we have a thing called the workforce development, the workforce situation. What percent of people in the workforce are actually working? Well, it's around 60-some% of the people who are actually working. We have people in America who have never worked a day in their life, and yet they're collecting benefits from the government, whether it be food stamps. And remember, the government just said no more snacks, no more bad food for you in food stamps. You get the stuff that you need, the proper nutrition stuff. No more candy, no more treats, no more sugary stuff. And there's a certain faction of the society that's up complaining, saying, how dare they take away that? Our kids need sugary snacks. People never worked. And they're saying, well, you want your food stamps? You're going to have to work. You're going to have to go out there and show that you're earning it, trying to get a job or working at a public service position. All right, so that's one of the problems. So now we have the illegals in the hospitals, where we're trying to get that ended, where they can't get that anymore. Well, all of this requires increasing the budget by roughly $1.2 trillion just in this year alone. And that's what the Democrats are fighting for. Now, the president says, okay, I'm going to lay off 100,000 people that you can't bring back because they're not funded under the normal programs that fund people in government. They're going to say, no, we're going to eliminate 100,000 people. And the other thing the Democrats want is to say, hey, the president can't tell us how we can spend our money. He can't, after we approve the money, we're going to spend it place X, place Y, place Z, whatever it is. The president can't come in and say, no, you're not going to do that. I'm not going to let you spend it. They want to make sure he can't do that. Those are some of the things, folks, are being argued about. The biggest one you talk about is the Medicare, the aid for illegals. It's because they go to hospitals. Hospitals want their money. Hospitals put them on Medicaid. The government ends up paying for that. That's the story. You may not like what you're hearing, but that's why this détente, if you will, has been going on. It's in its second week. How much longer can it go? I don't know. Will somebody bend and finally get 60 votes in Congress and the Senate? I'm not sure. Who's going to win this battle? I don't know. Republicans want a clean bill through the end of the year, not for the next 2 years, 1 year, whatever, just through the end of the year. The Democrats, they want the money increase now. They want to change the rules and change the laws that have already been put in the books. That's where we stand. And the reason is Chuck Schumer, the head of the House or head of the Senate, he's real worried because he's not the person you need to go to talk about stopping the event going on, stopping the shutdown of the government. Ocasio-Cortez, she says, you come to me. And the reason is simple. She's looking at running in the New York State for Chuck Schumer's position as a senator. And you think he's not worried about it? The left is taking over the Democrats. Not just small, but big. I mean, really big. Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, the left is starting to take over the entire Democrat Party. And when they do, stand back, folks. It ain't going to be pretty. Now you know. And now let's see what happens. Well, most of America drinks coffee. Believe it or not, most of America does. And when you think of coffee brands, you think of all sorts of different brands, but probably the biggest known coffee brand is Maxwell House, right? Maxwell House Coffee, good to the last drop, according to their marketing gimmick. Well, Maxwell House has done something different. They have renamed their coffee. Are you ready? Maxwell Apartment. You heard me right. Maxwell House Coffee has now gone to Maxwell Apartment. Why? Because in today's world, so many people, young people coming up, can't afford a house. House is too expensive. They don't have the down payment. House prices have gone up dramatically faster than people's income. It used to be you had to have a certain percent of your income, say like 25% of your total income, could be used on a house payment, on a house, paying for your new house. Well, the problem is the payments on the houses, because of the interest going up, payments on the houses have risen dramatically, as well as the prices. So people can't buy a house. So what they had to do, they're getting an apartment. And the people asking and trying to get apartments has just dramatically increased. So Maxwell says, well, you know what? We're not dealing with people in houses anymore, good to the last drop. We're dealing with people living in apartments because that's where the majority of America now lives. So let's change our name from Maxwell House Coffee to Maxwell Apartment Coffee. You probably will see it on the stands for a while, but folks, it ain't going to be forever. This was a marketing gimmick. This was a plan by Maxwell House people to get more attention to their coffee. So when you go out and buy your pot of coffee or your whatever you happen to buying, Maxwell House is concerned that you are buying, other brands, specialty brands, special mix, special brew, special whatever you call it, custom-made coffee, or coffee that's free trade, whatever it is, from certain places, because you want to have that, special coffee, not the standard brand like Maxwell House or Nescafe, for that matter. So what they did was, let's change our name for a bit from Maxwell House to Maxwell Apartment, because they figured they would get the publicity. And yes, they have gotten the publicity. And you see the can. Here's what it looks like. The container, you might want to get one just for posterity's sake. Might become valuable down the road. Or down the road, it might mean exactly what's happening in society. People can no longer afford a house, and they're forced to live in apartments or something close to it, condominiums, whatever. Because in today's world, young folks coming up have been priced out of the market, and they can't afford a home because the interest rates are too high and the price of the homes has gone through the roof. But it turns out that one little city in America happens to have some of the best home prices in the United States per capita. And one little town happens to be Fort Wayne, Indiana. Best home prices around. Now, do we have the highest income in the United States? No, we don't. Are prices higher than everybody else? No, they're not. But on average, people who are moving from California, from Florida, from New York, from all these places around the United States, coming to Fort Wayne are going, man, I can't believe the house prices here. Because you have a house in California, maybe it's worth $1.5 million in California. You sell the house, you got $1.5 million. You come to Fort Wayne, you can buy one heck of a nice house in a very upscale neighborhood for a whole lot less than the amount of money that you made selling your house. That's just how it works. But when it comes to coffee, you can get your Maxwell Apartment, because that's the gimmick, that's the plan, and that's the marketing coolness that they are doing to get their name put out there so you may think about this down the road and buy Maxwell House. Not a house, maybe coffee, maybe Maxwell Apartment, whatever it is, they're selling a brand and they want you to buy it. Well, the professional baseball season is quickly drawing to a close. Right now, we're getting ready for the World Series to come up sometime this month, whenever it does. But there's a lawsuit that was filed that you may find interesting. And frankly, it created a name for an individual. All right, let me tell you about it. Back last year, the Phillies were playing a game, and one of the players hit a home run. Well, players hit home runs all the time, right? Well, where the ball landed, a gentleman had grabbed the ball and wanted to give it to his son. And suddenly this lady came running over, screaming and yelling the ball belonged to her because this was her section. And she ranted and raved. Well, when those kind of things happen, the cameras on the following the baseball team, well, they tend to pick it up. They tend to watch it. And of course, as you know, everybody today has a cell phone with a camera in it. So you had a number of people in the stands, had their cameras up. Boy, they were just saying, okay, fine. Let's get video of this woman doing whatever she's doing. Well, ultimately, all that video ended up on the internet. Yes, it ended up on a social media site, as they always do. And the lady was named Philly's Karen. Well, because they give a name Karen to people who are kind of, well, annoying. And for whatever reason, it went viral. Everything involving this woman went totally viral. Philly's Karen became, well, almost a moniker. Now, what happened was the gentleman he gave the ball to the woman. Here you go. Didn't want to have a confrontation. Ultimately, management of the team was contacted, and the gentleman and his son met with the team officials, and then ultimately the son was given a nice autographed baseball bat and a whole bunch of other stuff from the Phillies team, saying, hey, thank you for being a fan, thank you for this, that, and the other. So they actually came out pretty good. But the lady, Philly's Karen, didn't come out too well. Turns out she was ostracized. She became a joke. She became a meme. And she says, I lost my job. I lost my dignity. I lost my life. So what did she do? She filed a federal lawsuit. You heard me right. Philly's Karen filed a federal lawsuit suing both the Major League Baseball and social media platforms. Now, you're saying, wait a minute. You see this stuff all the time on social media. You see all the memes, everything that's going on. Heck, we see it everywhere. Can you sue for that? Well, apparently she feels she can. At least her attorney, who's probably being paid by somebody, whether it's her or not, I don't know, because she said she doesn't have a job anymore. Well, I think the federal law, probably it's called Section 203, is probably going to cover this, as well as the social media folks, and probably is not going to get anything done. But there's always a chance that the federal courts may step in and say, this is new territory. This woman was defamed, and she was put on social media in so many different ways. Her situation went viral, and she was insulted. She was defamed. She was slandered, call it whatever you choose to call it. She was put down in the media and in the social media. And she wants her day in court. She wants her money. She wants her life back. But will she get it? Well, that's going to be an interesting case coming up. I just thought, it got me to thinking and say, does this mean if the courts say, you could be hassled or you could be charged or you could bring a lawsuit against somebody who videotapes you doing something? Well, could that happen? Well, anything could happen in today's jurisdiction situation. So now you know, Philly's Karen, as she's called, she's suing in federal court in hopes the courts will be on her side and give her life back. And if they do, recording somebody and sticking it on the internet may become a very, very different project that may result in you, the person who films, being in some big trouble. Or maybe not. It all depends what the courts have to say. We'll just have to wait and see. Well, a new national survey has just been released by the Gallup organization. Gallup is considered one of the more popular and accurate polling companies, and they did this poll nationwide of adults. And here's what they returned with the poll. They found out that today, only 28% of adults trust what they read, what they see, and what they hear in the mainstream media. Think about that. Only 28% believe what they see on TV, what they read in the newspaper, and what they hear on the radio. Now, that's down about 3% from last year. So it had a little bit more last year, but it's getting worse, folks, and that's what's going on. The people in America no longer believe what they see, no longer believe what they read, or frankly, what they hear. Why is that? Well, we have become very, very partisan in America. You have the red, the blue, the left, the right, the liberal, the conservative. And each are saying, I don't believe what I'm seeing because whatever they happen to read, whatever they happen to see, they're saying it's not correct. They're lying. This has happened basically on cable TV with the likes of MSNBC, CNN. These stations are all saying things that people go, wait a minute, that's not legitimate. That's not true. And people don't believe what they see. Then they open up their newspaper and see stories in there. They're going, wait a minute, that's not accurate. And this is turned down for the likes of like the New York Post, or the New York Times rather, the Washington Post, and many other papers. They're saying, hey, what they wrote, what they came across with, and this goes back to things like the Russiagate situation and those kind of things that happened over years past. People reported and said, oh, this is accurate, this is accurate. Well, you know what? This is the worst it's been in many, many years. Now, for Republicans, they haven't been over 20% believing since clear back in 2015. Democrats rated like 51% believing it, which means 45% of Democrats don't even believe what they see, read, or hear. There's the problem, folks. We have become so political in the media, so politicized, and even frankly, it's become generational when you think about it. The young people, the youngest group out there, they don't believe much of what they see, read, or hear anyway. And it's really unfortunate because the media, the mainstream media, used to be legitimate and accurate. For those who went to journalism school, sort of like I did back in the old days, it was who, what, where, when, why, and how. There was never an opinion into an article. Well, today that's changed. I don't know what the journalism schools are preaching, but opinion gets into everything. But the problem is people who read it don't believe it. Now, what's the media going to do to try to fix that? I can't tell you. They try to change their actions, try to change their story reporting. Well, unless your reporters are willing to change and have a different mindset than they learned in journalism school, I can't guarantee that. But I can tell you this. 70%, roughly 70% of Americans no longer believe in what they see on TV, what they read in their newspaper, and what they hear on the radio. And folks, that's dangerous. Because if you don't believe that, where are you going to get your information from that's accurate? Then you have to ask yourself, where are people going to go? Are they going to go to social media sites? Are they going to go to some of these various websites? You don't really know what you're going to get. You don't know what's accurate and what's correct. We used to believe it was the media. We used to believe that what came from the newspapers was the gospel truth. We used to believe what came from television. I remember the old days of Walter Cronkite, of Huntley and Brinkley. They told you what was going on. They didn't varnish it. They didn't slant it in any particular direction. They just gave you the story. Let you decide. But it's no longer that way. We have become a partisan nation, partisan in our particular philosophies and partisan in our politics, very partisan, and also partisan in our media. The media is no longer right in the middle. It's either one side or the other. And that's affecting all types of media. And hence, America, the public, you and me, no longer believe what they see. Yes, for Republicans, it's only about 20%, has been that way since 2015. But Democrats, only 51% of Democrats believe what they see and read. So it's gone completely both sides. So the media, America has lost its faith in you because they don't believe what you're telling them. And you know what? Until you resolve that, we will continue to slide back, become more and more partisan. And when we get to that level, things start to get very, very tenuous and could ultimately become very, very dangerous. Just saying. Well, later this month, NBC is about to release what I believe to be the 23rd season of their premiere episode that they've been running for, well, more years than you can possibly count. It's NCIS, Naval Criminal Investigation Service. starts his 23rd year on NBC. And Leroy Jethro Gibbs, will he return, is one of the questions that's being asked. Now, there's a whole bunch of questions being asked about the upcoming episode of NCIS. And some of these, maybe, just maybe, will be answered within the current series this year. Here's one of the spinoffs, as you know, was NCIS LA. It ran for 13, 14 years. And one of the characters was Sam Hanna. Well, Sam Hanna, after that show ended, he ended up on NCIS Hawaii. So he was there for a while. But all of those shows, the NCIS Hawaii, NCIS LA, and even NCIS New Orleans, I'll talk about that in a moment, they're all gone. They've all been dropped. But the storylines for all of those episodes are still playing out, and people are wondering, hey, what's going on? What happened to them? Where did they end up? Well, it turns out that maybe this year, the writers at NCIS are going to answer some of those questions. And that could mean bringing back some of those characters. Now, you take NCIS LA. Well, there was a big one there, Hetty Lang. Remember, she was the head. But she disappeared for a year. Now, it was probably COVID-related stuff. But whatever happened to Linda? So, will they answer that question? Possibly this year in NCIS. What happened to Hetty Lang? And then we go down to NCIS New Orleans. There you had Dwayne Cassius Pride and Scott Bakula. Well, Scott Bakula was supposed to be getting married, and that was the whole thing about him getting married to Rita Devereaux. And that whole episode going on, what happened to the marriage? Where are they? Where did everything end up after they got married? So, will Scott Bakula make an appearance on NCIS LA? Or NCIS rather, the main show, the mothership as they call it? Will he return? Very interesting. We don't know. And finally, NCIS Hawaii. Now that one had Vanessa Lachey. And she was the head of that particular agency in Hawaii. And she was involved with a number of things and was trying to figure out where was she going? Where did she end up? And some of the storylines they had. So the bigger story is going to be, will this year's NCIS finally solve the mysteries that came out of the spin-offs of the original NCIS? So, will we find out this year what happened? Well, hopefully we will. And it's anybody's guess. But when the new season starts up here in the month of October, there may be some very big surprises. And possibly some of the show lines we're running on all the various spin-offs may finally come home to roost. And you may finally find the final answer. What happened to those shows, those stars, and those characters? Should be a very interesting season this year when NBC premieres the latest version of NCIS. And finally, will Leroy Jethro Gibbs finally show back up on the set? It's going to be interesting. Nobody knows, but everybody's waiting to find out. You know, one of the things I love about fall, the autumn temperatures, the crisp air. Well, also something big happens in the fall, and that's college football. That's right, America loves college football, and who can blame them? You know, right now, you take a look at Indiana University, they're very popular. Heck, they're in a top 10 team right now. Stands are full, people are having a great time, enjoying themselves. I remember back in the day when I was younger, I used to go to Notre Dame football. My friend Alan Cardell would go up to see the Notre Dame play. Now, this was during the era of Lou Holtz and, well, Jerry Faust. The Jerry Faust was not a good era, but Lou Holtz, that was a pretty good era. We would go up to the Notre Dame games, and before the game would start, you always went to the tailgating parties that were going on. They had great tailgating parties. I mean, you walk around there, and you could see parties like nothing you've ever seen. And then, of course, you go in the game and watch the football game. Well, it turns out that another university here in the United States has developed a more interesting tradition that apparently is going to be catching on, they think, in other stadiums around the country. The school is the University of Colorado. and their football coach is Deion Sanders. You might remember him as Neon Deion, primetime they called him. Well, in Colorado, University of Colorado football, their games usually are played in the afternoon because it's high, it's cooler in the Colorado area in the fall, and the games really start around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, when the second quarter arrives, apparently something happens in the second quarter that Neon Deion says, man, I can't believe what's going on here. Because something big happens at the University of Colorado at 4:20. Because at 4:20 in the second quarter of the game, the fans in the stands light up. And I mean, they light up. Beyond anything you could possibly imagine, they're up there just changing the look, the feel, and the noise of the crowd. Because after 4:20 p.m., instead of people yelling, screaming, and hollering, people are going, ooh, the field is so green. Hey, you hungry? Let's get something to eat. It's kind of how it is at the University of Colorado. The reason there is about almost 10 years ago, down in Colorado, maybe more than 10 years ago, they legalized marijuana in Colorado for recreational purposes. And now, on that campus, well, I guess everybody's doing what they're doing, and especially at the football games at 4:20. It's become a tradition. So, okay, fine. I've seen it happen before, but heck, I remember back years ago, in 1970, I was in flight school. I was dating a girl at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. And she said, hey, you want to go to a movie? I said, sure, let's go to a movie. We went to see a movie called Woodstock. Now, keep in mind, this is like 1970. Walked into the theater, and there was a blue haze covering the entire crowd in the theater as the movie projection is going on. I'm going, this ain't a good plan being in here. Because contact high is not a good plan. And Air Force people, well, that bad. It really is. Heck, the airline pilot, remember, he said, I ain't flying. Somebody was doing a doobie in the men's room, or the washroom of the airplane. You got to be careful with that. But the point being is, the University of Colorado has a tradition. And apparently the tradition now, at 4:20 in the second quarter, well, the fans light up. So if you want to send your kid to a school where they're going to have a little more interesting time, Colorado might be the place to go. Or maybe not. Your call, your school, and your money could be going to Colorado. Just saying. Swing, and there have been more upsets than you could possibly imagine in this year's ranking. We're top rated or no longer in the top 25. And of course, you have the NFL football going on, and who believed that the Colts would be this good this season? Nobody knew. But Major League Baseball, hey, the Cubbies could be on the track to win again. Who knows? But let's go into another story. The WNBA, the Women's National Basketball Association. Well, as you know, they were leading up to the playoffs, and we've just finished the playoffs. And surprisingly enough, the top two teams in the championship are the Phoenix Mercury and the Las Vegas Aces. But the big event was the Indiana Fever, and how they progressed and how they managed, even though they lost most of their players to injury, how they scraped together a team and literally fought their way into the finals, made it clear semifinals. It went down to Game 5, and even that went in overtime before they were beaten by Las Vegas. Well, here's the big deal. So, Indy loses. They're out of the season for the year. Their season is done. And now we have the finals of the WNBA. Phoenix, Las Vegas. Well, guess what? Well, apparently 96% of the people who were fans are going, we don't care. It's not interesting. The tickets, believe it or not, are having a difficult time selling. And as a result, for the finals of the WNBA, they have seen prices low at $30 $35 of tickets that were advertised originally at $150 a pop are going for $35, and even people then are not saying, we're going to spend that kind of money. Will they spend the money in Phoenix and Las Vegas? Yeah, they probably will. But is there interest in the NBA finals? The telling thing will be the numbers ratings. We don't know the TV ratings yet because obviously series is just getting started. And we won't know until the season is over and the series is complete. I believe it's 7 games to see who wins. Now, there's some good players on both teams. I have no argument with that. I know Las Vegas has got that Asia Wilson, who's pretty doggone good. I mean, she hammered Indy pretty big time. She's fluid, she's fast, and she's very, very adept at what she does. Give her that. The Indy Fever, they had something that they had Caitlin Clark, biggest scorer in the NBA, WNBA, call her what you will. She won. And you had the classy ladies like Sophie Cunningham from Missouri and Lexi Hull. And you end up with the Amigos. Well, you know what? They were something that got people to watching TV. They wanted to see what was going on. And then you had all these new players coming in to fill in for them when they got hurt and couldn't play. They had like 5 of their best players out. And yet that group, that bunch, was practically a throw together team. Well, apparently America liked them. The numbers when they were playing the team, big numbers because people enjoyed watching the Indy Fever and their team. And even when they lost in that final game because their lead point guard, she went down, had a, she's going to recover, she's going to be fine. But sometimes the body gives out. Hers did. So now the problem is this. You got a WNBA final that 96% of people don't care. 96% of people saying it's not a fan problem. The people are saying it's a league problem. And maybe that tells the entire story. And will the ladies strike? That's going to be even more interesting. Only time will tell. And the TV ratings, everything. Let's just wait and watch. It's going to be very, very interesting.